King Kong vs. Godzilla was a massive financial success for Toho. A follow-up involving King Kong was dropped in favor of using one of Toho's own monsters to battle Godzilla. The 1961 film Mothra had proven popular, so it was decided to combine the two kaiju stars in a Godzilla film. The first Godzilla film was a dark reflection of the power of atomic weapons, and the second film was still quite brooding. King Kong vs. Godzilla started to get a bit silly, but it's in Mothra vs. Godzilla where things start to get bonkers. But the result is actually pretty amazing. The Toho Godzilla Dream Team are back, with Ishiro Honda directing, Tomoyuki Tanaka producing, and Ifukube and Tsuburaya providing the score and visual effects respectively. Familiar acting talents return, with several cast members from previous Godzilla films gracing the screen, the most obvious being Akira Takarada from the original Gojira and Yu Fujiki from King Kong vs. Godzilla. The miniature work, as usual, is amazing, and the film opens with a showcase of tokusatsu as floodwater destroys structures on a storm-hit beach. The typhoon feels convincingly powerful, and even the water pumps used to drain the aftermath look realistically articulate. Being a kaiju film though, water isn't the only thing to invade the beach, and slowly floating to the shore is a giant egg. Investigations into what the egg may contain are initiated, but, as in King Kong vs. Godzilla, corporate interference gets in the way of science, as Kumiyama of Happy Enterprises announces that the egg is his company's property after completing a successful purchase with the locals. This introduces an interesting science versus corporate greed debate, though it is only half-heartedly pursued. Happy Enterprises are more than happy to allow the public to view the article, for a small charge of course. As for what hatches, well, it will be the centre attraction of a new Happy Center theme park. Personally, I'd wait and see what it is first. Memories of Godzilla and Anguirus rampaging through city streets would make me a little cautious. Just to make things even more weird, twin fairies appear, and while talking in perfect synchronicity, claim the egg is theirs and contains Mothra. They warn that once the egg hatches, the young Mothra will unintentionally cause havoc in her quest to get back home. Why are things always so perilous in Japan? The fairies, by the way, are played by real-life Japanese twin singing sensation, the Peanuts. Their vocal harmonization is really haunting, and I was impressed at their performances. It's no surprise really that Toho had them appear in a few films. Now, let's look at the monsters. Godzilla emerges just over half an hour into the film, but not from the sea. He bursts through the sandy earth in what has to be one of his best entrances. He stands and shakes the dirt from his body, revealing a fantastic new, slimmed-down design. He's woken up in a pissy mood though, trampling through an industrial area and purposefully destroying buildings with tail flicks and atomic breath. You can tell he's just woke up. He's clumsy. First of all, getting his tail stuck and pulling a pylon onto himself, and then tripping over into a castle and taking his anger out on the innocent structure by clawing it to the ground. The design of the suit is exceptional. The dorsal spines are fat and spiky, the face has attitude, and the body is well proportioned. The base is wide, but not baggy like it was in King Kong vs. Godzilla, where there sometimes looked to be a bit of excess suit. So far in the Godzilla franchise there hasn't been a bad suit, and I feel that this one is the best of them so far. Godzilla looks leaner and perhaps a tad less aggressive. The suit certainly looks to have more movement, and that movement looks more natural, and the tail swish looks more controlled and not as jerky. The arms have a distinguishable shape with recognizable joints. In King Kong vs. Godzilla, Godzilla's arms stuck out awkwardly from the side of the suit and resulted in a silly hand clap being the only real arm movement possible. The neck is slicker too. It's less wide, less crocodilian, and more natural looking. The head is amazing. In some shots it helps to give a meaner look because Godzilla looks as though he's snarling. The film is famous for Godzilla's wobbly lip. During the previously mentioned scene where Godzilla loses his footing and falls into Nagoya Castle, I don't know whether the fall was deliberate or not, but the suit takes a battering and Godzilla's face literally breaks. The suit developed a wobbly lip, and it was decided to leave it as is, as it gave a soft realism to the lips. It's very clear in some scenes. So this Godzilla suit is much more agile, and it needs to be because of all the movement. Suit actor Nakajima has much more to do in this film. At one stage, the Godzilla suit even catches fire. While we're on the subject of Haruo Nakajima, I'm certain that in some scenes, you can actually kind of see his face. The suit has a thin mesh in the neck where the suit actor can see, and more importantly, breathe. Sometimes you can clearly see where his face is pressed up against the mesh. It happens a few times. In retrospect, some dark makeup would have masked this. Another thing you don't see often in a Godzilla film is blood, actual human blood. Obviously lives must be lost during the carnage of kaiju mayhem, but to see a human bleed by the hand of another human is oddly shocking. In the next film, Godzilla would be a hero character, more like Mothra in this film, but Godzilla doesn't seem like a baddie here. In fact, he never really has. Godzilla isn't evil, he just is. This is one of the key differences between Hollywood and Japanese cinema. America tends to have binary heroes and villains, with a simplistic divide between good and evil, light and dark, whereas Japanese cinema and folklore is more nuanced, with monsters reflecting aspects of humanity as a way to learn moral lessons. I sympathize a lot with Godzilla in this film. During a scene where he's being electrocuted, he screams and thrashes out in pain. It's pretty harrowing to watch. I found myself rooting for Godzilla. Maybe it is his time for him to be the protagonist for a while. As for Mothra, I have to admit, I am very fond of this Lepidopteran beast. This is the first Godzilla film to not feature a suit-mation kaiju. Okay, that's maybe not entirely true because models and puppets have been used in all the films so far. However, Mothra is entirely hand-operated. This enables the kaiju to look completely unique and move in a unique way. It's not easy to make a giant flying moth look like it's flying, but the wing movements are excellent and used to good effect as Mothra causes Godzilla annoyance with her powerful wind, as it were. The wing movements are fluid and fast, something which later films seem to lose the art of, with monsters hovering with little or no wing movement. Mothra isn't scary. She's not all sharp teeth and vicious roars. She's a defender of the Earth, though not an actual member of 1980s animated TV series Defenders of the Earth. Defenders of the Earth! Defenders! Instead of a palette of browns, greys and greens, Mothra is a vibrant creature, full of colour. She even has sparkly eyes, like David Essex. The truth is, Mothra is cute. With that big fluffy head, little dangly legs and massive eyes, she's the monster you could cuddle up with. There are kind of three Mothras in this film, the original Mothra and her two offspring, and her babies are nowhere near as cute. The massive caterpillar maggot-like larvae move convincingly. They're not simplistic figures dragged around rocks. They have articulated movement, moving mandibles and flashes of personality. It would be so easy to get these wrong, but thankfully, they're very well realized. The idea of a giant moth against an atomic reptile seems ludicrous, but her differences make her a success. She can't throw a punch, but she can generate strong winds which obscure vision and cause her foe to fall over. The visual effects really convince us of its power. It destroys buildings and causes Godzilla to become unsteady. The power of his atomic breath is mitigated because he can't aim it properly. She might look like she can be swatted, but she is capable of dragging Godzilla by his tail. There's not really much physical kaiju on kaiju fighting action possible, given their different forms, but by using a series of fast and frantic takes, we really get the impression that Mothra is giving Godzilla a good fight. The battle is filmed well and handles the limitations without ever feeling dull or repetitive. Godzilla actually gets his arse handed to him. We are told in the film that Mothra's life force is fading and that she doesn't have the energy to return home. Although we know that her offspring will replace her and effectively be a new Mothra, it's still quite sad when we see her finally expire. Mothra, using the last of her energy to help others, is part of the central message of the film. The monster battles and the circumstances around them are used as narrative devices to expose greed and promote humility. Hang-ups over nuclear weapons are clear, and references are made to people wanting to ban them. Island natives remind their visitors that the existence of Godzilla is their fault. It's Japan's responsibility to burden because they played with the devil's fire. The native islanders have been innocent victims. Their once beautiful island is now a desolate land littered with skeletons. The Godzilla film franchise is changing. This is a different world to the one in Gojira. Now the existence of kaiju is known, and Godzilla is becoming a loved figure. The films would come to celebrate Godzilla as a heroic figure as the series started to cater more for the younger audience. Admittedly, this film has some of the most bonkers features you could imagine in a film, and whereas some Godzilla films would become a mess of half-told stories and feeble plots, this movie is rescued not only by the good visual effects, but by a coherent narrative which, despite the craziness, flows nicely and never feels laboured. Some Godzilla films are guilty of stringing together scenes which seem to be linked by the flimsiest of premises, rather than progressing through to a satisfying conclusion. It's easy to see why this is a fan favourite. It's a well-crafted film, and although the moral messages aren't as strong as the anti-nuclear messages from the first film or two, you are left in no doubt that the biggest problems we've faced are because of our own greed and destructive behaviour. The final words in the film state that the best way to thank Mothra is to create a better world.